Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much. So I'm going to talk a few minutes about this crazy thing called my career and why it's so crazy and why it's been so incredible. And hopefully from this, you can appreciate why my tagline is against all odds. So first of all, I am a woman, in case you didn't notice. And I am someone who, at a very, very early age, knew that I would probably be a leader. Some people thought I was bossy. Some people thought I might have been brutal and a little selfish. My parents would say I probably bossed them around for most of my young days. Now, why would I bring that up and think that that is something so important for all of you to know? Because as a result of being a girl, and as a result of having that kind of interest in other people and trying to influence and shape and execute, that was not considered something that was of high value. It was considered something that I needed to sort of repress and push down a little bit and maybe nicely file, but not one to bring out in the open. I am my parents were first-generation Americans. They were entrepreneurs. My mother was lucky enough to not have to work after my father and his brothers took their company public and then took it private. And it was an entrepreneur, immigrant, total feeling of wondrousness for the family that we had and what we were able to do. But simultaneously, I was this girl who was really interested in business and really interested in all these things. And I was told, it's not for you. It's not for you. You need to find another pathway. Well, fast forward in high school, right in my senior year in high school. I had a great high school. I have friends from New York, that's where I'm from originally, that absolutely are still a part of my life and a strong piece of my fabric. Well, fast forward, senior year, the guidance counselor then looked at my parents and said, you know what, don't waste time on her going to college. She's smart, she doesn't work hard, she doesn't come to classes all the time. She lives a highly social, another word for partying, life. I was well-read, I was a great writer, I didn't do that well in school, and they told my parents, don't send her to college. There's no need. She can learn some sort of vocational skill. Now, I was outraged. I thought, how dare you label me? How dare you think I wouldn't do anything other than amazing things? High school was just a different point in time in my life. It was a time to read amazing books, hang out with lots of people, learn a lot about music, and party, and do things that probably I'm not that proud of, and that my daughter, who is a Shadyside alum, would not be proud of. But you know what happened? I went to college. I graduated in college in 3 years. I had 5 internships. I really thought I wanted to go into social services. Every single internship I had, someone offered me a job. And I kept thinking, the world must be so desperate. Why is it after every internship someone is offering me a job? But I started to realize that I was starting to take responsibility. I was starting to understand what it was like to have an impact. And for the first time in my life, I started to put the pieces together and said, no one else is going to judge me as a result of this linear procession that I've had up to this point of going to high school and then going to college. I'm going to make a difference. And by the time I was 22, I actually was overseeing 115 people working in a facility for people who had mental disabilities and physical disabilities that were erroneously placed in hospitals. And they were undergoing a class action suit. And it just so happened at one of my internships, I worked on a piece of public policy, and the governor at the time of where I was living said, you know, here's a young person that might be able to help in here. I walked in. I will never forget, I had 115 people, I had nurses, I had adjunct doctors, I had staffing staff, it was a union. And I walked in the first day, And one of the supervisors, who I was going to be her boss, looked at me and said, "Is your mommy know you're out? Do you have any supervision? Does your mommy know that you're here?" And that began my progression into trying to understand what it was like to have an impact and to drive change. My own parents didn't even believe that I really had that job. They came instead to visit me at the job location just to peek around to see if what I was telling them was real. So, you know, over those next 10 years, I went to graduate school. I sort of changed the way I started thinking about the world and realizing there's probably not much that I couldn't do. And for the first time, I felt this flame inside of me saying, you could really almost do anything. Now, I know you think that might be such a huge, broad brush of an expression. But when you have an opportunity at such a young age, like I did, to lead people, to make a difference, to fail over and over again with rapid succession, it builds confidence. It builds the amount of confidence that I wish most people would have today. And it's one of the things that you don't learn while you are really in school. You only learn that day in and day out. I remember once, I must have been in my 20s, and my right hand at my job, with a master's degree and very well educated, killed himself. A few days after that, in the same environment that I was at, a woman was murdered through domestic violence, through her partner on the job. Someone came to our site and killed her, and I said, oh my gosh, I can't do anything. How could this be? I cannot do anything. Here I was, confident, feeling like I really understood the mojo of my work. And I walked away from that and said, you know what? I probably need to think about what it means to be a leader and to influence people. I had to go, one time I had someone who came after my staff and me, and I went into hiding right around the time that my daughter was born. And you might say, how could you have this many troubled people in one workplace? Audrey, maybe it's you, right? Maybe it's you that's attracting this kind of thing. But from those experiences, as a leader and as a woman and as someone who now leapfrogged with me, started to get into technology and started to see that not only was it really against all odds and the world was moving so fast and I was working in data centers and working with, you know, advanced application developers, and I started working in a space that I had no cognition about what that kind of work was in a period of time that was starting to move so incredibly fast. I was the only woman. There were really no women. There were no women that were coming up through computer science. There were no women that were working and willing to grab the ball and become leaders. And so what I learned is that it's really not the work per se, it's the relationships that we have with other people. It's taken me through this whole trajectory of learning to build my own self-esteem, to understand against all odds, and to begin to figure out that it's all back in a continuous circle. It's really about people. It's about your ability to bring people up and bring people ahead of you and surround yourself with incredibly smart people. Because you know what? As great as my confidence has been over these years, I can't do it alone. I can never do any of this alone. So I go from social services to get into strategic consulting, I get into finance, I get into technology, I get into working at a company here in Pittsburgh that was created out of Carnegie Mellon 25 years ago, Maya Design. I work with a multinational company called Alcoa where I have teams all over the world. And then I get a call as I'm sitting on Southside Works, and someone said, you know, they're doing a recruitment for the Pittsburgh Technology Council. And I'm like, oh my God, what is that? I don't know anything about that. And then they said, just come, just interview. It's a really amazing time in Pittsburgh. And the world is going to pay attention to Pittsburgh. We believe that. That was 10 years ago. And as I started to get connected into Pittsburgh and started seeing the possibilities and the opportunities, I assumed this job as the first woman, the only woman, that is running the Pittsburgh Technology Council that was started 34 years ago by a bunch of guys who said they weren't going to let this region go to hell in a handbasket. So my life has gone in, people come to me and they say, how did you go from this to this to this? I thought you were trained to go this way. Why is there no flow path that takes you into a nice linear trajectory? Because it doesn't. Because if you want to grab onto things that matter to you and want to have an impact, it can never be linear. Because if you pair that with the rapid rate of change that we are going through right now that is so fast and so lightning fast, your technical skills quickly evaporate. And so the most important thing is that you build skills that continuously develop your capability to learn. And if you continue to do that, you will far exceed where I have landed. You will far exceed any possibilities because there is no more one job. There is no job that when you think you're 22, you're going to be at when you're 30. But if you have skills and you have it paired with confidence and you have an opportunity to fail, 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 and pick yourself up as quickly as you fail and demonstrate that through relationships, we win. So for me, I don't get an opportunity very often to sort of talk about what I've gone through in my life. Many people say, Audrey, your career has been in so many different directions. And I say, it's incredible. It's been amazing. And I gift that to all of you. As you who are here as parents and as you who are here as kids who are headed into the next iteration of the coming decade, these are great times ahead. We are living in an amazing, amazing time. But just remember, it really is about against all odds, because nothing ever comes that simply, and who would have thought that the companies that are on the NASDAQ today, or those companies didn't even exist sometimes 6 to 7 years ago. And I can tell you what's going to be on the NASDAQ in the next 5 years are companies that you and I have not even heard of and that are going to be changing the world. So change the world, make a difference in your own life. Remember, if you are a woman, if you are a young girl, you are at least half of what the future is, and be a part of it. I am very grateful for the time this morning. I thank you all, and I know you're going to have a rockin' day. Thanks for listening to my story.